Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another in our series of managing your small business through the pandemic. Webinar number 33 consecutive weeks here on Webinar Wednesday, hosted by the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Well, good afternoon. My name is Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield SBDC. And thanks for joining us. I think we got a good webinar again for you today. Uh, and I know some of you have told me I always say that, but I always believe that going into it. Lucky number 33 weeks in a row. We're going to be here every Wednesday for the foreseeable future, including Veterans Day, the day before Thanksgiving, maybe even during Christmas and New Year's, because the pandemic goes on, so will this webinar. So thank you for joining us. We're going to get into a lot of different topics. So let's get rolling right along. First of all, our sponsors for Webinar Wednesday, as many of you know, Kern County, California, Mid-State Development, the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, the CSU Bakersfield School Public Administrations, of course, we're powered by SBA, and also the Blue Check Valley program out of California State University, Fresno. Thank you all for being sponsoring the program and bringing us able to bring it to you each and every week. So with that, we're all part of the America's SBDC program, about 1,000 centers across the country, funded in large part or powered in large part by the SBA. And in addition, there are 5 regions throughout the state of California. Of those 5 regions, we're part of the Central California region, as you well know. The Central California region of 14 counties, all the way from the south to Kern County to the north of Mono, to the Pacific Ocean and the state of Nevada, 14 of the greatest counties you'll find in the state of California. So thank you. Contact your SBDC locally. We're here in Bakersfield, downtown Bakersfield. There's a center in Clovis, Merced, Modesto, in the Monterey County area, and also San Luis Obispo. So reach out if you have any issues on your business, any questions that they can ask for you, any funding or any types of local funding that you might have with pandemic relief. So glad to promote something. Hey, haven't done this in about 33 weeks, but hey, we have a unique and really great opportunity, I think, for our retail businesses. We have retail expert Bob Phipps, who's known as the Retail Doctor. And the Retail Doctor is going to be joining us next Thursday from 10 to 11:30. A half-hour presentation, an hour of your best questions or even not so good questions on what you need answered as far as brick and mortar. It's going to really focus on small business and brick and mortar. Live webinar from really a national author, national respected individual in the retail field, and really perfect timing right in front of the holidays to try to get going before the holidays. So that is going to be coming up next week. So the link is, you can go to the Central California SBDC and find it and register there. And I'll show you the link later on in the show and possibly try to get it in the chat box later. So today, well, if you would, today's October 28th. It's kind of unique. October 28th. Who would have guessed that this is the first of the 33 webinars that I've donned the long sleeve shirt? Yes, 32 consecutive webinars in short sleeve shirts, being a not maybe a man of fashion, but a man of comfort during these last 32 weeks. So now if anybody asks you, how long does summer last in Bakersfield? Well, it's 32 weeks. So long sleeve shirts are new today. So that's great as we get up to a whopping high for your weather report today of 79 degrees. Really nice fall weather finally and cooling down. So that's one thing that's new on October 28th. But you could probably get your weather anywhere else. So you're probably here to maybe get a little bit of an update on maybe some of the state and local mandated opening tiers and some of the numbers that came out yesterday. We watch those numbers very closely now that we have the new monitoring system, and we want to know how we can best prepare and know which of the colored tiers we're going to be in and what stage of reopening for many of our businesses. We're going to jump, of course, into the PPP, and we're going to talk a little bit about reminders and timelines. And hey, next week's election day, and we get to go to the polls. Well, actually, I guess I voted. My poll was about 2 feet away from where I'm sitting now. But we are going to have an election day next week. And so we're going to go over the borrower and also the lender elections that are associated with the PPP program. I thought that would be a nice little twist, seasonal like the long sleeve shirt. We're also going to mention a little bit today, and we'll just do that right now and consider it done. The EIDL. The EIDL deadline is fast approaching, and there's still plenty of money in the economic injury disaster loans and through December 31st. But the one thing I want to remind you today is that if you were declined for whatever reason, if you had some issue in trying to obtain the 3.7% interest money over 30 years that is available directly through the Small Business Administration, that they do have a reconsideration workshop on many, or webinar on many Thursdays. So I believe there's one coming up tomorrow. So, but reconsideration is an option for you if you've had an issue getting that approved, or perhaps you received an EIDL of, let's say, $100,000 and something has changed, and perhaps you would like to see if you could borrow an additional $50,000 up to the $150,000 limit. Reconsiderations are actually doing that. They're actually reconsidering larger amounts for EIDL loans for borrowers that qualify. And remember, unlike the PPP, where we're pretty much a payroll-driven program, the EIDL is different, and the EIDL is going to continue to look at a relaxed creditworthiness of the borrower and other factors. But as conditions and things change, perhaps you can actually access more capital directly through your existing EIDL loans. So keep that in mind. But again, that is got a fresh deadline of 12/31/2020. We have our special guest that I'll introduce in just a little bit after we go through this and talk about funding and funding available through the pandemic and otherwise, and some of the things that you might want to know as far as capital infusion and capital access and things like that. And of course, always we're going to take your questions and a poll. So today, if you will go to the question box, the Q&A box, and put your questions in there, we will get to those at the conclusion of the webinar. And so ask your questions. Chat, you can put other things in chat that are by another nature. So you can use the chat box to basically bounce around. We'll try to get some links in there for you to be able to take with you as we go through today. But first, let's go to a poll. So our first poll question today is, we're going to start off with a little bit of a fun one. So it's not fun about COVID, and it's not fun about that we haven't been able to travel, and we're going to address that in next week's webinar. But to set that up for next week, we're going to ask the first poll question, and that is going to be, it's related to COVID and the national parks. So first poll question today is going to be, what national park community has the highest COVID-19 case rates? I might have you on this one, huh? So there's 5 choices that you have: Zion National Park in Utah, of course, our very own Yosemite National Parks, the Great Smoky Mountain National Parks in Tennessee. We have Yellowstone, which is basically spreading 3 states, but mostly in Wyoming, and Glacier National Park in Montana. So the highest rates, what we did was we looked at the communities around them, and we looked at the surrounding counties. Some of them had as many as 4 counties, and just kind of took a ballpark average of those to figure out what the rates were and who had the highest rates. So right now you're voting, and right now our leader is, as Boo Boo would say, Jellystone Park is number 1. So that's about 40% right now. A lot of support for Tennessee, Yosemite, Zion, and also Glacier National Park. We're going to end this poll right now with about 67% of you voting. Thank you for getting in, and end it and share the results with you. And what national park community has the highest COVID rates? You think it's Yellowstone Park at 43%. And second was Smoky Mountains at 26, Yosemite 21, Zion National Park at 5%, and Glacier National Park at 5%. And drum roll, the winner is the highest COVID rate, coming in at about 78. Yes, 78 per 100,000 cases. You might recall last week we were at 6 in Kern County. So at 78 is Glacier National Park in Montana, 5%. And then if you just go up from the bottom, Yellowstone was number 2, and it was about 68%. Great Smoky Mountains was number 3 at 33%. Yosemite, only 5% of the 4 counties around it. And lastly, Zion National Park came in at a 0%. So again, listed in opposite order. The very bottom was first and the very top was last, with Glacier at 0 and going to actually, Glacier at 78 and actually Zion at 0. Okay, well, this question might not be as much fun, but let's ask it anyway. So our second question of the day is going to be on actually accepting. Has your bank accepted your PPP yet? So we're going to launch the poll and ask a simple yes, no, or not sure question. Is my bank, or has my bank currently accepted my PPP forgiveness application? So if you've filed for a PPP loan, you're going to most likely do the application process for forgiveness. Either yes, no. Obviously, I think we're all a little frustrated about the speed about this is happening. So get your vote in. We have about 43% of you voting. As expected, the no's are winning. But vote on my bank is currently accepting or has already accepted my PPP forgiveness application. So give you another couple of minutes. We got over 60% of you in on that. And going to end the poll just right now, share these results with you. And what we see is that, there you go. Over half of you have not had your bank accept it or is even accepting the PPP forgiveness applications. 51% of you. 28% of you, your bank is now accepting. And the sad part is 21% of you don't know. And that has been kind of some of the communications we've been getting with some of the over 5,000 lenders in the program nationwide, is that some of the information isn't coming as quickly. So, or maybe you're not even ready for forgiveness at this point, still using the 24 weeks elected term to actually spend those funds. But okay, thank you for participating and sharing that and letting us know where we stand. Continue to do this and continue to kind of over time see how many of us are in. But it is somewhat encouraging that 28% of you are able to at least file for forgiveness now, or I think a poll we did a few weeks back, we already had 12% that actually had submitted their applications through their lenders for forgiveness. Okay, so what we'll do now is move along and do a new little share over here. And let's go into here. One of the things when we start talking about COVID, and we've talked about it so regionally, by county throughout our region and state, we never really have looked at a map. Now, wouldn't you really have liked to seen this map before I asked the national park question? I almost tried to do that, but a little too much switching back and forth. But you really see the higher areas, and this is from the Wall Street Journal. That almost tried to get away from me there. And there you'll see the legend up there about the number of cases per thousand, and it just doesn't want to stay there. But what we saw there was the Midwest, and also on this tracker, the northern states, North and South Dakota, Montana, Wisconsin, those areas are so deeply problematic now with the spread of the virus. So it's kind of a different spin on things as we kind of lost our map there, but had it for a brief second. So anyway, kind of nationally, that's what's happening on daily. There's the number of cases, as we know, we're kind of spiking now nationally. But just to kind of get a national perspective from a change, and rather than just state and regionally on what's going on, because so much of the national news we hear is kind of geared in that fashion. Okay, so now also looking at the state level, and we had our state statistics that come out yesterday. Obviously, we always highlight Kern County first. And nothing seems to want to work fast today. So Kern County actually came out and remains in the substantial rate. We have been in that range for quite a while, and the numbers were amazingly consistent, with again coming in at 5.8% of new COVID cases per 100,000, compared to 78 cases per 100,000 at Glacier National Park and their gateway communities around there. So the last 2 weeks we've been at 5.7. So we only showed a very moderate increase. Again, we get our numbers adjusted higher and almost to back to the widespread or purple bracket because we don't have enough testing being done. We're still at about the 75% level of the state median average for testing. So that is important, is if we want to kind of get down to the yellow or the more minimum categories of yellow and orange, but we are only at a 4.2% positivity rate, which we saw were a little bit different with kind of the state average, 7.2 cases. So they're getting higher number of positive cases out of those other areas. So if we look at other areas around us, we'll go over here to San Luis Obispo and similar type numbers up there. Tulare is in the widespread area and kind of still kind of in the purple and has more restrictions on their businesses. And going up the San Joaquin Valley, we see other things. And see there, you see Tulare's numbers, 8.3 with a 4.6 positivity rate. So we're seeing it's kind of just like a slight to moderate trend upward, tick upward, but nothing really too serious. And it kind of holds true throughout the San Joaquin Valley. Stanislaus County, again, remaining rather similar to Kern's numbers. But one of the big changes was up here in Shasta, which actually was at 24% and had dropped significantly to get this week into the red, substantial, and out of the purple. So we only saw 3 counties in the entire Central Valley, that being Tehama County. Madera continues to be problematic in the Central Valley, and also Tulare, that are not experiencing open restaurants and some other types of businesses, at least to a limited degree. So kind of what's been going on in the state and kind of been trending. Locally, when we look at our Kern County numbers and continue to look at this, great news. There were no deaths to report in the last 24 hours. The new cases were at 87, which tend to be about where it seems like they continue to fall in at. So kind of in a holding pattern, and kind of as things open up more and more and things continue to stay in a holding and not increasing too much, gives us and sparks that optimism for maybe an orange level sooner than later. So remember, it takes 2 weeks of numbers in the favorable area to actually move into a new area, into a new tier with less restrictions. And the restrictions would be, for a lot of businesses, an increase from a 25% occupancy to a 50%. And for our dine-in restaurants and other type businesses, that's really important moving in toward the winter months. So what can we do to kind of help out if we can? If you have a symptom, of course, get tested. And really proud and pleased to announce that on campus today, at the campus of CSU Bakersfield, we do have free COVID tests today. It is the self-swab, less invasive test. If you've had any tests like me, and I like to brag, I've had 6. 6 negative tests, and it's a 2 to 3 seconds for those of you that haven't had it, of a little bit of discomfort, but it's 2 to 3 seconds. But this is the self swab, which is less evasive, and you actually turn it back in. Partners with the Kern County Public Health and also CSUB. And also the testing is going to be tomorrow from 8 to 6. The important thing is tomorrow they are going to be doing walk-ins. So it's encouraged if you want to test, and we have had many of you ask us, why in the southwest part of Bakersfield is there not free testing? Well, I heard that loud and clear last week, and thank goodness CSUB President Lynette Zalesny took care of that for us, so thank you. And there's your free testing today, the remainder of today and tomorrow at the campus of CSUB. If you're not familiar with the campus, come in through the south, come in off of Camino Media onto Roadrunner Drive up to Lot I. And if somebody will do me the favor of actually dropping this link right here, where you can have the link and actually go ahead and actually sign up for those that are interested. If you could drop that into the chat for everybody, I can do it in a little bit, but if you do it now, that'd be great. And we'll do is then hand out the application voucher and then tomorrow bring it to your appointment. But actually exciting, free testing at CSUB for the next 2 days. We also have a testing again by the COVID-19 Latino Task Force, and the Kern County Latino Task Force is continuing to move on with new tests, and they have a couple that are coming up. They have one coming up actually. I don't have it really on this slide, I guess. So they do have it coming up, and we'll continue to do tests. I think I have a slide of them in case I had a little problem, and we will talk about where their 2 tests are. One of them is in East Bakersfield tomorrow between 1 and 4. The other one is in Oildale on Halloween on 10/31 between the hours of 10 and 2. So another couple of means for you to get out and find out about potential opportunities in order to do that. And there we go. There's the test. So tomorrow at the Greenfield Family Resource Center in East Bakersfield, and then on actual, there we go, on Halloween. And it's good to read right there that Halloween candy will be provided by Supervisor Maggard. So there you go. There's 4 opportunities to get tested for free in Kern County. Okay, so let's change our share here and get out of this and kind of come back full circle and come back and talk a little bit about PPP and actually forgiveness, why we got a few minutes to do that. And so what I'm going to do is get us back into the slide deck here, and our testing at the university, testing there. Let's talk a little bit about the timeline for forgiveness. After you apply for, you go through this timeline, and remember now we have 24 weeks to use the funds. That is by December 31st. So if you got a loan after August the 7th, you don't have the full 24 weeks. Remember, again, we have the 10-month window from the end of the covered period to apply. The form that still says that in the right-hand corner that expires on 10/31, to the best of my knowledge, that is still being accepted. I do expect it to be updated, but right now it says the form expires on Halloween. So that does not have anything to do with the filing date for your PPP. You have 10 months from the end of your covered period. And then it goes 60 days with the lender, and then also 90 days at SBA. So there's a general timeline to keep into consideration. Now, we talked about some of the elections with Election Day coming up. So as the borrower, you can elect the 24 weeks to spend the funds instead of 8 if you prefer. So your covered period can be the 24-week period. It can be a partial allocation of that 24-week period. Remember, it's a lender by lender choice on if they will allow you to file for forgiveness before the entire 24-week period or the end of the year, or at the time you expend your funds, let's just say around 12 or 13 weeks in. Check with your lender. You can also elect the date if you're using the 8-week version. So you can elect it to include a payroll period on either side of that 8-week period if you still want to keep it at 8 weeks, kind of for some of the reasons we just mentioned, but you are able to elect the date of your covered period that it begins. So keep that in mind. That is one of the elections that you can actually make. Now, key one is that the lender can make is they can extend for PPP loans that were made before June 5th. They can extend the term, and that's the amount that is not going to be forgiven. Remember, that's going to be your EIDL advance if you have a PPP. And then any amounts that are not forgiving, they can extend the term of that loan from 2 to 5 years at 1% interest. As a borrower, you can elect which safe harbor for the full-time equivalents. If you're doing the 3508 or the EZ form, remember that is not a process you have to determine during the new 3508S form, the small form 50,000 and under. And you can also elect a certain seasonal aspect to that. And the seasonal, our very last, this was comes from the PPP FAQs. And what it does is it actually is kind of the first one. This one came in April, and it was about seasonal businesses. And with the seasonal businesses, what they did was that they realized that after the PPP period started, and maybe there were some seasonal businesses that were actually declined because of this, but they actually came back and said for a newer gave some alternate periods, and you see the periods below. So there were some alternative periods under FAQ number 14. And so then they came back with the very last FAQ that I've seen, or one of the last ones, was that question number 41 was, can a seasonal employer elect a 12-week period and make all the required certifications on the borrower application form? And so what this is related to is that the rules of the game changed. After they came out with the actual borrower form that you made, when you go in through the forgiveness process, you're asked to certify that you agreed with all those. And so it's kind of a catch-22. The rules of the game changed with the question that came out, the question 14, to where you could elect something different. And it refers back to the form. And SBA wanted to make it clear that yes, that applicants that they certify to receive a loan under the rules in effect at the time that they're submitting is issued by SBA's implementation of the PPP. So if the rules of the game have changed, which many of them have since the very first PPP program came out, I believe on April 3rd. So number of different rule changes that came along, you would be certifying that as that rule has changed since the initial application form, you are still okay. Okay, a lot of words there to describe something like that. But really the key that I wanted to get to had to do with our question of the week. And our question of the week is, does the new PPP 3805S for loans under 50,000 mean I have a blanket forgiveness? And the short answer is no. We talked about a blanket forgiveness for 150,000 and under was submitted to Congress. It was never approved. This did come out, and it is not just a blanket, we're done process. As we detailed a few weeks back, you still must certify. And we're really going to pound that word certify in, because one whole page of the application form for forgiveness is you certifying a number of different things. And so you're certifying that the loan proceeds were spent in the fashion prescribed by SBA. And so that's going to be 60% for payroll and using it for utilities or mortgage payments, or also rent, other certified, actually not certified, but actual uses of the fund program. So that's our question of the week. And then just to follow up on that question of the week is really the certifications. We really want you to read those and make sure you are pledging that under perjury. And then when I actually answered that question and added this other form, I started thinking, hey, wait a second, is there a potential audit trap? And by audit trap, what I mean is there an audit trap that where a borrower can actually have 24 weeks of PPP expenses. And as a borrower, you have great flexibility to choose which of those expenses that you actually get forgiven for. You're going to need to detail those. Even if you have one 50,000 and less, you should have those isolated and be ready to be able to prove that at a later time if there is an SBA audit. So by audit trap, what I'm getting at is you have great flexibility during that 24 weeks. But then let's say you get your forgiveness on the end of the year, 12/31. Let's make this simple and not go through 2 tax years. But then having that flexibility, those expenditures, if you recall, as of law is right now, as it stands, cannot be on your tax return. So then all of a sudden, you have kind of, I think, like maybe an audit trap to where you have to make sure that those 24 weeks of expenses in your PPP align with those that are going to be on your tax returns. And this is why, as a guest speaker, we're going to bring in a professional accountant, a CPA, somebody who can talk and address this, because there's going to be issues in December, a lot of client issues that I think that are going to arise out of things that we haven't talked about or have been foreseen, such as, I'm calling it an audit trap, but it could be something else. It's just making sure that those amounts reconcile, and the fact that you have identified one on one form that you can justify it on the other. But more on that later. Okay. I hope I didn't open up a can of worms there, but you know, I'm a can of worm opener. That's what I do. Our special guest today, Scott Rogalski. Scott lives and breathes finance. It's great having Scott back. Scott has appeared at some of our capital summits last year. About this time, we were in Mammoth Lakes for the Eastern Sierra Capital Summit. It's great to have Scott on the program. He's been at CSUB doing an event there for us, and he plays a key role in the strategic planning and development for capital infusion, bringing a creative approach to connecting hard to find capital resources, small businesses, and others involved in growth and expansion. 15 years, Scott's been a banker, he's been top lender, a lot of different things. Scott is he's a jack of all trades who works for our Northern California SBDC region, all those counties north of the great Central California region. So Scott, it is great to have you today, and I'm going to give these controls to you. So take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kelly Bearden, for the invite. And yeah, I wish we were in Mammoth instead of doing this Zoom thing. But we'll take what we can get. And I appreciate the update that you did, Kelly. You did an awesome update, everything that's going on. And yeah, we'll go ahead and jump into this. So today, October 28th, thanks for the time. So I work in the Northern California SBDC network. So we go from the Oregon border down the coast to Santa Cruz. We cover all 9 counties of the Bay Area. We go southeast to Stockton, then back up through the Nevada-Oregon border. And we partner. I do a lot of partnership with Kelly around trying to get people financing and the hard to find type financing deals are the ones that we love to go through. So what I'm going to go over today, it's usually I go over a lot of different financing options and how to access them and what lenders are looking for. But right now, just as you're experiencing with your business, is a little bit uneasy of times. It's unknown times. It's really hard to gauge what lenders are doing, what they're going to do with this PPP, with the EIDL, with the forgiveness, and then also what they're going to do with loans going forward. And there's no magic 8 ball or futuristic palm reading where we could figure out what's going to happen with loans and how we're going to get there. So my agenda today and my walkthrough for my presentation is about essentially getting your financials together, finding out the right questions to ask yourself, ask your industry, and then that way you can convey it to lenders. We know, Kelly and I know, that you probably didn't get all the money that you were asking for, whether it be PPP, EIDL, a combination of the two, whether your bank that you bank at is going to give you more money and what that looks like. So it's important to get all this together and be well prepared when you go and talk to lenders, whether it's the PPP forgiveness or whether it's applying for EIDL or whether it's trying to get other money. So kind of looking at the right questions, what are the right numbers that lenders are looking at, making the right assumptions, which obviously it's real hard to make any assumptions, but let alone the right ones. Looking at an example of a P&L, profit and loss, kind of like a walkthrough, talking about what lenders are looking at for 2019, even though we're in 2020. If you go into 2021, what are lenders looking at now? What are they going to look at in the future? It's very interesting, even though 2020 is almost over, but we lost about half of it, or 6 or 7 months of it. Some industries are still going through losing sales right now. So a lot of lenders are still looking at 2019 numbers. If you're profitable, they're more likely lend you money. How we work with lenders, how we can help you get money, and then the loans that are available now. All right, so starting with the right questions. This is really good for you to work with your advisor at SBDC. Also, like your CPA, your bookkeeper, your accountant, maybe you yourself as a business owner or your business partners. What were you projected to do before COVID? What did that look like? A lot of businesses had great Q1s, January through March. They had, or January through February, and then maybe part of March. And the last 6-7 months have been obviously unbelievable. But what were you projected to do before the pandemic hit? How much potential income or sales did you lose on a month-to-month basis? What did that look like? Yeah, we know that a lot of businesses were closed down, but we don't know exactly how much you really lost until we look at your financials or we talk about it. And being able to put those numbers into words is which is what's really important. So how much income are you going to be able to capture back? Maybe some sales that you had in April or May, you're able to capture back. How much did you make from, January, from the time that you were closed to when you reopened? If you are reopened, at what percentage are you reopened? And then how much money are you going to be able to make on a month-to-month as you kind of continue through the year? What does that look like? And how different is it from 2019? Is it, 30%, 42%, 80%? What is the difference year over year, so that you can kind of gauge how you're going to jump into 2021 if your business is still alive and thriving, or trying to stay alive. So focusing on the numbers. So obviously lenders and all banks look at profit. They all look at profit, which is essentially your income, sales, your revenue minus all your expenses is your profit. So most businesses will not have a profit this year. Some industries are thriving. Most business owners will take a loss, or they'll break even. It'll be zero at the end of this year. But if you were to, look at your financials before you actually submit them to your bookkeeper or your accountant, and if you're trying to gauge where you're going, lenders look at the most important numbers. There's like top 5 or 6 numbers that they look at and they hone in at. Obviously, income and sales took a hit this year. So again, like, what was it at the beginning of the year? What was it last year in 2019? And where are you going as this year ends and then you jump into 2021? So, and then income and sales, they may have changed. You may have just been a straight retail store, and now you have retail and you have e-commerce, and e-commerce is taking over. It was possibly all retail, and then 0% e-commerce. And now it's possibly 80% e-commerce and 20% retail or in person or drive up if you're a restaurant or some type of other food business. But income and sales usually just has one category, like I sell clothes. But now because of the pandemic, there's different ways that you get your product or service to the marketplace and to the community and to your clients. So you may have 5 different revenue line items. You may have drive up, you may have in dine in, you may have e-commerce, you may have other ways selling through partners and stuff like that. So it's good to show that and how you've been able to pivot your business. Cost of goods obviously doesn't change. If you're a food industry, you're still going to have to buy food to sell it. If you're a manufacturer, you're still going to have to buy material to make something. So kind of looking at that and how you're been able to fine tune that. Obviously, labor and staffing is a huge expense. How have you been able to curb it or pay for it with PPP? Advertising, most advertising has gone down as far as being able to expenditure, $5,000, $2,000, $10,000 a month for advertising. Rent is a whole totally different story. I'm not sure if Kelly has some people that come over here and help you with rent negotiations, but it's a service we provide at SBDC. And then any other major operating expenses that you're looking at, so kind of, crunch in on and figure out how you're going to make different as you go forward. So asking the right, figuring out the right assumptions. And this is just like, how well do you know your business? How well do you know your industry? How hard have you been hit this year? Where are you going in Q4? We're in Q4 now. We're almost done with October. We have November and December. Depending on if you plan to go through the rest of this year and launch into 2021, how have you been able to survive COVID? A lot of lenders right now are looking at your pandemic plan. It used to be like your business plan for a startup, an expansion plan if you're expanding. Now lenders are asking for your pandemic plan. How have you survived the pandemic? And if we give you money today, how will you survive the pandemic? How will you go forward? What is that pandemic plan? How are you going to conquer this? And a lot of you may not know how to do that. And this is some of the services that we can provide at SBDC at no cost. We can sit down with you and help you with a kind of like a pandemic plan that's kind of bulletproof for your business. So how are you going to maintain your income and your sales during the COVID? These are just great questions to ask yourself and your business, maybe your industry, do some industry analysis, which we can also help you with. What are you going to do differently to advertise to your customers? How are you going to attract them? Instead of paying $5,000 for print ads or whatever type of ads you're paying for digital, are you going to just go to social media, where it's possibly a little bit cheaper, easier to get to your clients? How's your business going to transition and pivot to the new norm? And then what drastic measures have you been taking to save your business, whether you save money on expenses or whether you decrease your rent somehow, or you possibly scrounge up enough money to buy your building so that you're going to pay less for your mortgage than you are for your rent, because a lot of that's happening right now since rates are super low, into the 3s or 4s if you're buying a building. And then how have you been able to, cut your costs and drive revenue? All right, so this is an example of a profit and loss, kind of like a walkthrough. This is something that you can do at home. You could do this with a financial advisor, a finance advisor at the SBDC with Kelly's team. And this is essentially just like a quick kind of like walkthrough of this year of 2020. And this is obviously a mock presentation kind of put together, but this is where most businesses are. If you do simplistic terms, if you take your business financials and flip it into an easy chart that's easy, accessibly, not that hard to walk through. This is essentially a P&L, profit and loss. Most business owners put these together on an annual basis from January to December for calendar year. But this is broken down month by month. This is so the lenders can see what you were doing at the beginning of the year. Then the pandemic hit. and how you have made changes. You either decrease staff or you increase staff, depending on your business model. And if you had growth, you obviously increase. If you let go staff, what does that look like? How much have you saved? How did you use the PPP? Your rent lease, did that stay the same? Did it go up? Did you sue your landlord? Like, what does that look like? Your marketing, your advertising probably went down. Probably that's some of the discretionary income that you didn't have to use for expenses anymore. Just kind of looking at, if you were to break, I understand that this is a highly condensed P&L, profit and loss, with very, there's only about 10 items on the left-hand side that kind of break down the expenses. I know most P&Ls have between 10 and 50 or 100 line items, but if you were to condense them and quickly look at them. So before the pandemic, I had great sales. I was in a banner year. Then the pandemic hit, I lost half my staff. I decreased my advertising. I changed the way I was doing business. Now I have different ways I receive revenue, and these are the different ways. And then you break that down. I've been able to increase my sales a little bit, or I've been able to not keep my sales increasing because my industry shut down, but kind of like talking through what's happening and showing the numbers and how you've been able to curve some of your expenses, create new ways of finding income, and then kind of where you're going, where you were going before COVID. Like for this example on the top right, it shows this company did about 95 grand this year with a net profit. Most businesses won't have a profit, but you can see that at the beginning of the year, they were making lots of profit. And at the end of the year, they made less profit. So it kind of just shows that. So as you're looking at 2020 numbers, you're trying to figure out what 2021 looks like. These are good things to look at if you put it on one paper. And we could easily have you, we can have you have access to this template. If that's something that's beneficial to you, it's going to help you with your taxes, with your CPA or bookkeeper, or kind of help you look at a snapshot of what happened this year. I'm sure Kelly tells you this all the time, how we help you at SBDC at no cost, whether you're in Sacramento like myself or you're in Bakersfield like Kelly. We help businesses all the same way at no cost, and we're here for you more than we've ever been. Try to understand taxes and PPP and EIDL and how it affects you. But we essentially work with lenders. Like, we talk to them every day and try to figure out what are they lending, what aren't they lending, what do they like, what don't they like, how can they better assist you and fund you. And we know through EIDL and PPP that you're not getting the answers or the communication or even like a callback from lenders on how to approach this. So we are your advocates. Like, that's what we get paid to do. We are here for you at no cost to advocate for you, to have these difficult conversations with your lenders, and to essentially help you apply for loans, help you navigate the arduous process of what it would take to get a loan, how to put your financials together, how to tell the right story. Like, you may, you love your business, you work in your business, and you know how to make really good car parts, and that you do, but you don't know how to talk about your financials and the story and where your business was this year and where it's going to go next year. So we can do all that with you, hold your hand, walk you through that. And then also, Kelly went over understanding the PPMs and the policy and procedures for the loans. How we help you get money. So we meet with you, teach you kind of how to do a quick fundability test, see if you're fundable, help you with a letter of explanation if your credit has taken some sort of hit. We kind of help collect and organize all your financials, personal financial statement. We understand that it may be hard for you to kind of fill these out. I'm sure you've had to fill some out for PPP and EIDL, but they're a little bit different when you're trying to go get a bank loan. So we can kind of help you craft all this and put it together, help you with I should have put it here. I put business plan and expansion plan, but also the pandemic plan, and how you're going to show that through some projections. And then we'll introduce you to lenders, so you don't have to go out there and do that all by yourself. We can do that with you. And then this is probably the most fun part. I mean, I kind of went through all the boring part before, all the numbers and the assumptions and the projections. But that's a lot of great things to teach you as a business owner when you're trying to put all that together, trying to save your business, be resilient, and bounce back somehow. It's good to know what your numbers mean, what they're telling you, what they're telling lenders, how they look at it. But as far as what's available today, um, there are still SBA 7A. That's just the fancy code name. You don't need to know that. But there are, for those of you that are on the phone that want to start a business, or you're dissolving your business and now you're going to start a new business, or you're trying to buy a business, there's still a lot of SBA still doing a lot of loans. Small Business Administration, they're in the business to do loans. They love guaranteeing loans. In the state of California, they normally guarantee about $5 billion. Now that we've had COVID, they've probably tripled that number, but there are still startup loans. Regardless of what you hear out there are still lenders doing startup loans. They may not be your bank down the street or who you bank with, but they may be more regionally, statewide, or nationally that we can introduce you to. A lot of them still are looking at 2019 numbers. And if you have a house with equity, if you have over 25% equity, they are going to take it. Before COVID, there was options, like they weren't necessarily going to take it, but now they're going to take it, and you have to be okay with that if you want to save your business. There's microloans, 50 grand or less. There's a lot of city, county direct loan funds that keep popping up for some CARES money that they had. West Sacramento just popped one up at Yolo County. I'm not sure what you guys have going on in Kern County or other counties surrounding, but there's always city and county direct loan funds that are popping up. They're still popping up. EDA, all you have to know is it's an economic development agency loan, but there are micro lenders, nonprofit lenders that have funds through EDA funding that you can possibly get a direct loan. A lot of private money, hard money loans. This is one of Kelly's favorite ways to get financing is through hard money or private money. But if you have some extra property just lying around, commercial or residential, you get some equity in it and you want to tap into that, you can get loans right away within 3 to 5 days. It's very quick. It is a higher interest rate, but it is one of the fastest ways for you to get financing. And those lenders or funders are still doing a lot of business right now. Accounts receivable financing is super hot right now. If you bill your people or your clients, and it takes them 30 to 60 to 90, 120 days to pay you, you can get an advance on that. It is a premium, but the factoring companies are really hot right now. There's state guarantee funding. So instead of SBA, which is federal, there's also state guarantee, which is through the iBank. It's through the governor's office of economic development called GoBiz. Kelly and I, we work with several different lenders throughout the state that offer this state guarantee lending, which is a little bit easier to get than SBA guarantee lending. But it's hard to find those lenders. So we can help you with that. And then, not sure if Kelly knows, but there is a new California loan fund that's supposed to launch this week. I know we're at Wednesday, hopefully Friday. This is a statewide loan, so any business on this webinar in the state of California could apply for this. There is not an active link yet, but when I get it, I'll give it to Kelly and he'll get it to you. You can apply for up to 100 grand. It's 4.5%. Those are the only parameters I currently know that I'm able to tell you, but besides of how they're going to look at credit and how they're going to look at PPP and EIDL funding, we're not positive on that yet. And we're also not positive on how big the loan fund is because it is the whole state of California. So we're hoping to find out more about that. Actually today at 1, there's another call that I'm going to jump on and hopefully find out more. But that's everything. And this is my phone number, my email. And yeah, if you, we can go to questions.
Great, Scott. We do have some questions. I think your last slide might have answered a couple of them, but because one of them, but I still kind of need to ask this. So we have somebody who's looking to buy a motel, And hotel does not have a flag, which is a buzzword for not being a branded like a Ramada or a Marriott or whatever. Does not have a flag, and it was mismanaged and closed this spring. Do I have any financial options?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, the answer to that question is usually yes. We just have to figure out what they are. We may not know them right away, but you do have some good options. Like what I was talking about earlier, we can tell the story, like where the motel was, why was it closed, where's it going now, does it still have a following, and then what's the capacity, and then how can you drive business. So yeah, definitely there's an option for that.
And I think you mentioned a little bit about asset-based lending, and I think that is maybe something. And your analogy on hard money, where it's really not one of my favorite programs, but it's one that in some instances does work, huh?
It
Okay, is
does,
equipment
yeah.
leasing still a viable option?
It is. It's just really expensive. But yeah, you can do equipment leasing. I don't talk about it too much because it's very expensive. But sometimes you can find some reasonable lenders that don't try to gouge business owners. But I always go to SBA 7A if somebody wants to buy equipment because it's a lot cheaper.
Uh, is the SBA still waiving monthly payments on new SBA loans?
They are not, unfortunately. As of
That
today, they're not. That ended
as of today.
September 30th.
So that was part of the CARES Act. Who knows, with another stimulus bill, maybe it'll have something in it.
Yeah, we might.
Um,
Yeah, we know we all might learn more after Tuesday next week.
so yeah, I had an interesting conversation recently with Keith Bryce, and he was talking about SBA lending on the fixed asset side. And you'd mentioned a perfect example, what is really popular now, and that is with the very, very low interest rates and typically higher rents. If you can swing a deal for a particular building and expand and grow into a building, has made them very popular over at Mid-State Development. So yeah, that's definitely a great way to go.
Yeah, I think it is,
Um,
and it's a great way to make a landlord, get bought out and paid off rather than try to, gouge you every month for rent if it's possible. Most times you could do a seller carry too. The seller can carry back some of the money, so you don't have to put all the money down.
okay, now these other questions, I got those out of the way, and now we're mostly on the PPP and forgiveness issue. And Scott, do jump in if you have um, something. Our loan documents state that the SBA gets 90 days to reply uh, to reference our loan being waived. When does that countdown begin? And on our timeline slide, I kind of covered that part of it quickly, but the process is that it goes to your lender, and the lender has 60 days, and then it goes to the SBA where they have 90 days. So it could be a 5-month process from when you actually approach your lender. That's the timelines that are actually mentioned by the SBA in some of the rules and regulations. Anything on that further you might want to add, Scott?
No, it is a little bit arbitrary and a little bit unclear. But yeah, when you submit all your paperwork to your lender, they can take it and they can submit it to SBA the next day. But SBA has 90 days to reply. So, which we're
So
all
those are
waiting
probably
for
those are the
more
worst
guidance
case.
on that. Yeah,
Yeah, so those are worst case 5 months,
yeah.
but it gives you the opportunity to get going and the reason why you might want to do that. With current loan forgiveness applications expiring on 10/31, have you heard anything about the form being used after that date? Have you heard anything, Scott, about the OMB clearance in the right-hand corner of the form that says expires on 10/31 on all of the 3 different forms for PPP forgiveness?
Yeah, I haven't heard, just like you mentioned earlier, I haven't heard of them coming telling us when they're going to change it, but it has been extended to December 31st, like you mentioned before. So even though it's funny because the idle had the same thing. The idle was showing that it was closing on September 30th, but it extended to the end of the year. PPP forgiveness application is extended until the end of the year.
And as a follow-up to that, Sheila would like a review of her PPP forgiveness. Sure, shoot me an email to that at kbearden@csub.edu. Next questions are more or less related to the COVID. Now we're in the COVID area. I'm about done. Not too inquisitory today.
Yeah.
So
What's
does
going on,
COVID
man?
testing at
Give us a teach up
CSUB detect whether you've had it in the past or just now? And that's going to be just now on the COVID test. So if you've had it and it's gone away, it's not going to show. And the COVID test, the link to sign up and reserve a spot, and walk-ins are available for tomorrow, is in the chat box. So you can actually drag that out and pull that down and use that if you so desire. And lastly, Dale's got a comment on deductible, and we'll get into this again. So maybe this is a good way to wrap up the Q&A. Deductible PPP expenses can be taken in 2020 if the forgiveness occurs in 2021. However, the PPP expenses would reduce the related 2020 expenses taken in 2020 in the year 2021. Okay, good to know. A lot of 20s and 2021s. But we will definitely get into that, and that is really an issue where I think that there's going to be a lot of questions coming up. And thank you, Scott Rogalski, for joining us on webinar number 33. It's great to have you here. Great to see you again, and hopefully next time it'll be in person. So for Scott Rogalski, I'm Kelly Bearden. We're going to see you next week. So keep everything going well. We'll see you for number 34. Our guest speaker will be Lonnie Lott, who's going to talk about tourism and some of the areas that are being affected and some of the changes that are happening. So whether you're in the tourism industry, maybe mildly affected by it, or maybe you'd like to plan a trip and want to know how COVID is affecting everything as it stands right now, trend-wise with travel, hospitality, events, etc. Until then, Kelly Bearden, we'll see you next week.
Thank
See
you.
ya. Bye-bye now.
Bye.